testing.
The lights aren't working, but it's working, so.
What's wrong with you?
I especially want to welcome any visitors or newcomers to our church and to call your attention to the special note for you, welcome guests and newcomers, on the back side of the order of service. Whoever you are, whomever you love, however you arrived at this beloved place, you are welcome here. I would also like to thank those of you attending online and note that the hymn lyrics and all the elements and text of the service will be displayed on the live screen. for the complete order of service, including weekly announcements, schedule, and upcoming events. The link to the PDF is in this morning's church email and on the church's webpage. I also want to call your attention this morning. The initial email that was sent out described the sermon as Lisa Garcia Sampson's sermon from last week. A subsequent email was sent out corrected. You can click the link on either one of those emails and it will take you to this week's service. A couple of other things. We are masking indoors on Sunday mornings as a way of striving to be an inclusive community. All outside areas are mask optional. The coffee hour will be out in the courtyard. The coffee dolly will be out there, and it is mask optional in the Jones building. Our Sunday social is hosted by Rachel Rose and the Welcoming Ministry. The in-person Sunday social will be held immediately following the service in the cast courtyard, and the online Sunday social will be held at 1 p.m. That Zoom link is in the weekly announcements and the Sunday morning email. One other thing, I would like to encourage you, what better time to give blood than Halloween season? And Gerald will be at his table outside. We have plenty of room for more people to donate this coming Thursday. And as always, please turn off your cell phones if you would, silent them. And now we have within these walls from Glenn. From Glenn. Okay. So I'm not going to do it as well as he is, but the Community Church Chapel Hill presents a musical adaptation of Shakespeare's As You Like It. It is going to be November 18th, 19th, and 20th, Friday and Saturday at 7:30, Sunday at 5 p.m. All the shows are going to be 90 minutes. There's no intermission. Ticket prices $15 for adults, $18 at the door, and 20% groups for 10 or more. So if you haven't already bought your ticket, get a bunch of friends together and come and support us. It's always a great thing, and we haven't done this in several years, and it is going to be exciting. Here we go. Now you'll get the real announcement.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
Do it.
Yeah, come on. Go for it.
Okay. For the first time since 2019, I'm Glenn Maribach, music director and musical director of the upcoming production of As You Like It at the Community Church. So since the first time since 2019, the Community Church will continue our tradition begun in 2007 of putting on a musical. And for the weekend of November 18th through 20th, our sanctuary will magically transform into Shakespeare's Forest of Arden as we present a musical adaptation of As You Like It, the Shakespeare play. And with the genius of our set designer, Doug Adams, you'll feel when you come into the sanctuary like you're walking into a Forest of Arden. We'll all be transformed. And he's made these wonderful set pieces that are gonna, just like the Transformers in the movie, that will transform from a dressing room to a Duke's chamber to a tree to everything. It's gonna be fascinating. And while you're there, you'll meet characters like Duke Frederick, who's taken over the nearby city by force and is in the midst of interrupting his daughter's oncoming wedding.
I will address a mighty power, and on foot I shall take my brother in Arden and put him to the sword.
Also helping with the show with the years, puppet maker Mickey Reed, who you might have remember from the music gala singing When You Wish Upon a Star. She's made various animals for the show, including a venomous rattlesnake, who in one scene attempts to attack one of our lead characters. And here's a preview of the rattlesnake. She's also making a number of other animals that you'll see in the show. And the music and lyrics for the show were written by the New York-based songwriter Shana Taub. who mixes musical theater styles with folk, pop, gospel, R&B, 90s boy band, and even country and western, as this song performed by Duke Sr., who leads the people in the Forest of Arden, and his favorite honky-tonk singer, Miss Amiens.
Oh dear, my lucky buck, come hoof along with me. Our parents did this dance, the apple ought to fall by the tree. I'm gonna hunt you down, I'm gonna hunt you down, down, down. You may be big game dearie, but soon I'm gonna hunt you down. I won't go stay, I'm a big game dearie, but soon I'm gonna hunt you down.
Whoa. And as well as along with that, if that weren't enough, our very own Reverend Thom will make a cameo appearance as one of the Duke's wrestler, where he'll be able to put his CrossFit training to use with assorted windmills, clotheslines, airplane spins, and atomic drops, and who knows what else. So you can find information on the small flyers that are in your order of service. I think this morning, take those home, put them on your refrigerator, and or by visiting our table after the service, or by visiting the As You Like It page on the church website, which is a link on all the flyers. And there's also a link to you can purchase your tickets after the service or online. So fall under love's spell in this gender-bending adaptation of Shakespeare's classic tale of chance encounters and self-discovery. And remember,
All the world's a stage.
thank you. Thank you, everyone.
All right, are we ready for worship to start this morning? All right. Our opening hymn, it's one that is a little bit unfamiliar to me, but we're going to give it a good go. It's number 51 in the hymnal, Lady of the Seasons Laughter. And I invite us to rise in body or in spirit and join in singing our opening hymn of the morning.
Oh, Scott.
Lady of the seasons laughter, in the summer's warmth be near, when the winter
call to worship. Archbishop Desmond Tutu of South Africa was one of the most influential, inspirational religious leaders of the past 50 years. He won the Nobel Peace Prize for his efforts to bring about the end of apartheid. He later chaired South Africa's Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Archbishop Tutu's famous sayings are inclusive. God is not upset that Gandhi was not a Christian because God is not a Christian. All of God's children and their different faiths help us to realize the immensity of God. Archbishop Tutu's famous sayings can be challenging. If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of the mouse, and you say that you are neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality. But this morning's service is inspired by a few obscure words from the bishop. He said, "I manage with consummate skill to hide my horns under my funny bishop's hat." Are you curious about this quote? Well, stay tuned. It will be explained later. In this spirit of curiosity, come, let us worship together. If you would join me this morning in reading the words for the lighting of the chalice, they are in your order of service. History, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived, but if faced with courage, need not be lived again. Lift up your eyes upon the day breaking before you. Give birth again to the dream.
Each week, we hold in our service a time for sharing the joys and the sorrows that we bring with us into church community. It's during this time that I invite you, if you've come with either a significant personal joy or a significant personal sorrow, that you're invited to come forward down either of the sides and briefly, in a sentence or two, share your joy or your sorrow. Before we start, though, I actually have 3 different people in the church who wrote to me this week asking me to place stones for them, and so I'm going to do that first. The first stone is placed for Bill and Joan Mead. Bill and Joan are mourning the loss of Bill's younger brother, Patrick, who died of leukemia this past Wednesday, October 19th. Bill and Joan write that we are grateful that Patrick's wife, children, and grandchildren were with him, and they ask that we keep them in our thoughts and prayers. The second stone is placed for Eileen Reagan. Eileen's niece, Alona, has been hospitalized in Philadelphia for daily seizures and is exhausted and discouraged. Eileen requests our love and support for Alona and her, and for Alona's mother, Mary, as they help see Alona through this difficult health crisis. And the third one is shared by Carol Genovese. Carol writes that her toy poodle Teeny, who had been with her for 18 years and 3 months, passed away on Monday, October 17th. She writes that my partner Bill and I knew it was time for her to go, and we let her go in peace. Fortunately, she was not in any pain, and they had the opportunity to hold her all morning until they took her to the vet. But the loss has left a hole in our hearts and will take some time to sort out. Fortunately, we have wonderful memories and a gazillion photos of her, reminding us of all the good times that we had together.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Gerald Bonner. You may remember a couple of weeks ago I was here for Gavin's Groupies, and we just want to thank you all for your wonderful contributions. We had the extreme hike last Saturday. It was great weather. Everybody made it through okay, and we raised $60,000, and your contributions were part of that. Thank you.
This weekend, I'm attending 2 celebrations of life. Yesterday for Mike Worsham, who died during the pandemic, and it's taken over 2 years for us to do this. So this is in remembrance of a great friend, Mike Worsham. The second one is for a celebration of the life of Sandy Babb, whose celebration is this afternoon. She was a dear, dear friend of mine, and I miss her greatly. But we celebrate having had that friendship with her.
I'm Ivy Brzezina.
And Cheryl Deagle.
And Jean McKinney.
And our dear friend Heather Kramer died last Sunday. She died peacefully, and she did a lot of artwork with people in the church, including RE kids up to adults. The column that is in the Commons, she actually designed and painted, and we're going to miss her dearly.
I'm Steve Warshaw, and I have a significant personal joy. Our daughter, Heather, who moved to the Triangle a couple months ago, is here with me this morning. She's waving over here. And it is a truly wonderful, wonderful joy to have her and her three wonderful, our grandchildren, so close.
I'm Rachel Rose, and I have some joys this morning. Thank you all for your support. My husband, who was in a really significant car accident a couple of weeks ago, is doing much better, and thank you all for expressing your concern. All things considered, I have to be grateful for the hope that we have in his improvements, his incremental improvements. I have another joy that our children who grew up in this church are living this church's mission. One of our children, much to his mother's dismay, pledged to a fraternity, but it is a service fraternity that is based on community service, and it is inclusive of all genders and races and more. And our other son has signed up to be an escort for those seeking abortion care so that they can have compassionate and safe companionship to access these important medical services. And lastly, after years of waiting, I was finally able to take the older adult Our Whole Lives facilitator training. I am now a newly fledged OWL instructor, facilitator, and I am so proud of this congregation for supporting this life-saving, life-affirming, life-changing work.
I'm Jay Miller. I have a sorrow. I feel like I need to give you a little quick background. Some of you know Freedom House Recovery Center. We help people with mental illness that really don't have other options, don't have insurance, usually indigent. We're in 4 counties. In 2020, I was the interim director, and I'm now the board treasurer. On Tuesday this week, at our Durham clinic, a man came in, don't know really much about the background other than he had a long history of violence against women. I don't know if we knew that. He was seen by our nurse practitioner, June Akundi. He attacked her, and the staff was able to subdue the man. Called Durham County, Duke Regional down the street, half a mile. And she did not survive her injuries. The whole recovery community is in mourning. I asked you to pray for her husband and her 4 children who are all under 16. And I'm just thinking about what I've heard this morning, the song we just heard and the Maya Angelou quote. This is something we can't change. With courage, we can face this, and I hope you'll all help us face this terrible tragedy. Thank you.
My name is Alexandra Hollid. My father died yesterday. He had Alzheimer's, and we'd sort of lost him little by little along the way, but this is obviously another level of loss. And I'm grateful that my brother and my mother and I had an entire week in the hospital with him to tell stories and remember him.
A final stone is placed for all the joys and sorrows that we hold in our hearts that were not spoken this morning. Would you join with me in a few moments of prayer and meditation? Spirit of life, source of our being and our becoming, we hold in our hearts the memories of lives lost, the memory of dear friends, the memory of parishioners, the memory of parents, the memory of a brother, of a nurse, of a beloved animal companion. We hold in our hearts all those seeking to recover, working to recover from illness and injury, from setbacks and challenges. And amidst the grief in our lives and in our communities, we hold as well the joy of human togetherness, of friendship, of care and support. Help us even in the midst of grief to choose paths of courage, the speaking of truth, the living of service, the expression of our values, not only through our words, but also through our deeds. And amidst all of these joys and sorrows, I invite you to hold with me a few moments of tender silence. Let us be still together. Amen. And blessed be. I invite you to open your gray hymnal to number 292. This is going to be our sung meditation, and I will just say it's the words of Emily Dickinson. And in all of my years of being a Unitarian Universalist, I don't think I've ever sung this hymn before. So I had Glenn sort of sing it to me to see how it went, and we're gonna go with it. So I invite you to remain seated, and I think we're gonna sing it through twice. Is that okay to sing it through twice? We're gonna sing it through twice. Let's do it.
life was aching, or cool one's pain, or held me a fainting robin through his nest. Again I shall not live in vain. If I can stop one heart from breaking, I shall not live in vain. If I can save one life who's aching, or cool one's pain, or help one fainting robin unto his nest again, I shall not live in vain.
If you would open your hymnals to reading 565, which will be our responsive reading this morning, I'll lead off and you can respond with the words, the italicized words. Prophets. Always it is easier to pay homage to prophets than to heed the direction of their vision.
It is easier blindly to venerate the saints than to learn the human quality of their sainthood.
It is easier to glorify the heroes of the race than
to give weight to their examples.
to worship the wise is much easier than to profit by their wisdom.
Great leaders are honored not by adulation, but by sharing their insights and values.
Grandchildren of those who stoned the prophet sometimes gather up the stones to build the prophet's monument.
Always it is easier to pay homage to Christ than to heed the direction of their vision.
Amen. Freely have we received gifts that minister to our needs of body and spirit. Gladly we bring to our church and its wide concerns a portion of this bounty. If you wish to donate online, there is a QR code inside of the order of service which can be read by your cell phone's camera. And there is information on the church's website if you're writing a check or to give there online. We will now receive the morning offering.
This piece will be sung by the women of the choir is by Jake Runestad, and the words are by Susan B. Anthony, and I thought I'd read you the words before we sang the song. These are all based on her writings and speeches. Rise up. There shall never be another season of silence. Deepen your sympathy, then convert it to action. Pray every single second of your life, not on your knees, but with your work. Think your best thoughts, speak your best words, do your best work. There is so much yet to be done. Rise up.
It is easier blindly to venerate the saints than to learn the human quality of their sainthood. Now, I have to tell you from the outset that this sermon might include ideas you disagree with. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. If you find yourself in disagreement, stay engaged. The worst thing that can possibly happen this morning is that you'll disagree with me. And if nobody ever disagreed with the minister, it wouldn't be much of a Unitarian Universalist church. I want to begin this sermon by talking briefly about 3 religious leaders. The first religious leader is a minister by the name of Marlon Lavenhar. Marlon serves as the senior minister of All Souls Unitarian Church in Tulsa, Oklahoma. All Souls in Tulsa is the largest Unitarian Universalist church in the United States. And not only is it the largest, it is 1,000 members larger than the second largest UU church in the United States. Being the senior minister of that church is a big job. But I want to tell you about his second job. It may not actually be a second job, maybe more of a hobby or even a side hustle. Marlon, besides being a fantastic minister, also happens to be an immensely talented political cartoonist. His political cartoons are posted on social media. They've also been published in books and in the local newspapers. His political cartoons deal with issues like gun control, reproductive justice, and legacies of racism. And like any good political cartoonist, he does not pull any punches at all. And a lot of his political cartoons are quite partisan, taking aim at a certain former president of the United States. And lest there be any doubt, he does not pull any punches at all. Now, here's the thing. If you go through his social media feed and if you go through the responses he receives, every so often, someone responds to his political cartoons by scolding him. But you're a minister. Or one commenter offered a sarcastic response. Any other inspirational cartoons, minister? I don't care about dirty politics, and you shouldn't either. The second religious leader I want to talk about is Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Desmond Tutu served as a religious leader over several decades. He was the General Secretary of the South African Council of Churches, then Bishop of Johannesburg, and finally Archbishop of Cape Town. Those are big jobs. But Desmond Tutu also had a second job, which was working to build a political alliance that would succeed in overturning apartheid. He received lots and lots and lots of criticism, indeed hatred, for his work to overturn apartheid. And some of the hatred he received was from people who complained that an archbishop has no place in politics. They even accused him of being the devil in disguise. Literally, you are the devil in disguise. To which Archbishop Tutu smiled and responded, I manage with consummate skill to hide my horns under my funny bishop's hat. And I keep my forked tail tucked away under my robes. Or consider the third religious leader I will mention this morning, Tenzin Gyatso, the 14th Dalai Lama. The job of the Dalai Lama is to be a living Buddha of compassion and a reincarnation of the Bodhisattva who has renounced nirvana in order to help humankind reach enlightenment. Being the Dalai Lama is an impossibly big job. But the Dalai Lama also has a second job, as if the first was not big enough. The Dalai Lama is also the political leader of the government of Tibet in exile. charged with restoring Tibet's political independence, or at least working for its autonomy from the Chinese government. And that Chinese government has invested considerable resources in developing propaganda to tarnish the name of the Dalai Lama. According to the Chinese government propaganda, the Dalai Lama is a charlatan, a faker, a man of worldly concerns, a false prophet only interested in political power. And yes, the Chinese government propaganda also depicts the Dalai Lama as a devil with horns. There are those horns again. Now, truthfully, it's hard to take seriously the complaints against these religious leaders. Chinese government propaganda should not be trusted. Defenders of apartheid shouldn't be taken seriously. And that person who sarcastically criticized the Unitarian minister from Oklahoma on social media, well, I actually did some digging, and it turns out that they're a fake Russian social media troll. Not even a real person. I'm not kidding. These criticisms don't seem like they're offered in good faith. They're not really interested in the supposed proper conduct of religious figures. They're interested in preserving the status quo. But for this morning, these religious leaders and the criticisms of them allow us to explore something of the dual nature of religious leadership, but also of the spiritual life in general. We might think of religious leadership as two, and even as the spiritual life as two. Minister of the largest UU church and political cartoonist, interpreting the political currents of our times. Archbishop of Cape Town and political strategist for the ending of apartheid. Dalai Lama as the incarnation of the Bodhisattva, of compassion, and head of the Tibetan government in exile. And it's not just these figures. Martin Luther King was criticized for being a Baptist minister and the leader of the civil rights movement. William Barber is criticized today for being a Disciples of Christ minister and the organizer of the Poor People's Campaign. Now, please understand, I am no William Barber. I'm no Dr. King. I'm no Archbishop Tutu. I'm certainly no Dalai Lama. I'm not even a Marlon Lavenhar. But I sure do know the push and pull. A push and pull between this sense of spiritual and worldly, and people who want more of one and less of the other, and less of one and more of the other. Fortunately, nobody has ever accused me of having horns, though. Well, at least nobody's accused me to my face. And I wonder if you've also struggled with the desire or the pressure from others, either the desire within yourself or the pressure from others, to be one instead of two. Has anyone ever told you that you should be more one way and less another way? Has anyone ever told you that you should be more one way and less another way? So I want to delve into this concept a little simply and plainly. There is a dualistic idea that the world can be divided neatly into two categories. Can be divided into sacred and profane, can be divided into religious and secular, can be divided into spiritual and political, can be divided into heavenly and worldly. And then beyond this dualism, there's often a value judgment that one way, the spiritual way, is better, is purer, is a higher way of being in the world. Do those thought patterns sound at all familiar to you? Of course, one thing that you can always do with a dualism is to reject it. Our spiritual forebears did exactly that. With the rise of humanism within Unitarian Universalism came a criticism of dualism. In the words of the 1933 Humanist Manifesto, nothing human is alien to the religious, the distinction between sacred and secular can no longer be maintained. Nothing human is alien to the religious. The distinction between sacred and secular can no longer be maintained. Everything is holy and nothing is holy. And we Unitarian Universalists, we are hardly alone in challenging this dualism. The Anglican theology of Archbishop Tutu says exactly the same thing. As Tutu biographer Shirley du Boulay puts it, Tutu believed there could be no separation between the religious and the political, just as, according to Anglican theology, there is no separation between the spiritual realm of the Holy Ghost and the material realm of Jesus Christ. I originally found Archbishop Tutu's line about hiding my horns in an article that was written about his life after his death last December. The article was entitled Desmond Tutu, Politician or Saint. How's that for dualism? And the article seemed to struggle with how to understand his legacy until the author of the article threw up his hands and said, what if we just don't even think about these categories as real? He concludes, the truth is that Tutu showed that the question of saint or politician is a false dichotomy. The work of both is to give us all an understanding that exclusivism is evil. Tutu's genius was to recognize that spirituality and politics are closely aligned because when facing God, we are forced to face our neighbor. Just as second wave feminism gave us the idea that the personal is political, that there's no longer a personal and political, that it's all melded, maybe these religious figures help us to understand that the spiritual is political and vice versa. In conclusion, my message this morning is ultimately not to worry about the boxes that other people try to put you in. If Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama are accused of being devils in disguise, then there probably isn't much hope for any of us either. Instead of hiding our horns, perhaps we should wear them proudly and not shy away from being outspoken and engaged, whether that's for reproductive freedom or for gun control legislation or for green energy or for voting rights or for the protection of trans youth. Instead of hiding our horns, we should question whether dualistic categories, saint and politician, spiritual and worldly, nonpartisan and partisan, actually continue to serve us well. We should interrogate the idea of what the spiritual life looks like. Because Archbishop Desmond Tutu had 2 jobs, but also 1 job. And the Dalai Lama has 2 jobs, but also 1 job. And Martin Luther King and William Barber and Marlon Lavenhar have 2 jobs, but also 1 job. Amen. Blessed be. And we're going to sing our final hymn this morning is about the 2 as 1. It is a hymn with words that are unfamiliar. That's the theme of the morning, but the melody is very familiar. The melody is Blue Boat Home, Heiferdal, but the words are different. So I invite you to rise in body or in spirit as we join in singing Hail the Glorious Golden City.
Glorious God.
remain standing and join me in reading the words to extinguishing the chalice, which are in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And before we sing our final song, Shalom, let's thank the musicians and the choir for this morning for great music. In singing Shalom, if you are not comfortable holding hands with your neighbors, simply cross your hands over your heart. Otherwise, you can put your hands down and join hands as we sing Shalom.